This video is designed to be interactive. The story is a writing prompt, and then you take it from there in the comments section. So, here we go. Mundane Dracula. As the pale orb rose in the black sky, Dracula stirred in his coffin. The lid creaked back, pushed by long, snake-like fingers that suddenly shrank back in pain. A single fat drop from last night's cocktail of victims' blood welled on his finger, and he quickly sucked it up. He could not afford to waste when feedings were so rare these days. With the blood gone, he saw a splinter lodged deep in his white flesh and pried it out. That was the problem with the fresh coffin. The edges of his old one had been worn nice and smooth over centuries, but he had abandoned it for a new Tempur-Pedic-lined coffin to ease the tension in his lower back. He took mental note to add sanding that down to his list of nightly chores. Dracula had to do all his own chores now, because he found keeping servants to be difficult. Mortals were too tempting and too easily became snacks. Besides, they expected to be paid, and the unemployed undead don't easily come by gold, or whatever currency was currently in use. It had taken 3 years of picking change from the pockets of his victims to raise enough for his new coffin. No one seemed to carry cash these days, opting for a purse full of plastic cards. Fellow undead were an equal hassle to keep, because their feeding demands could overtax the local populace. Things would get suspicious, and then he'd have the villagers up here again with pitchforks and torches and waving crucifix and stakes, and that was just a mess. They always left the place smelling like garlic, which is impossible to remove from 13th century tapestries. For weeks, he wouldn't be able to sneak up on anyone. If people had to believe some vegetable would keep him away, why couldn't it be something less offensive, like celery? Dracula stretched and dragged his hand across his face and felt the stubble. He considered it a curse that hair continues to grow after death, because shaving was a challenge without a reflection. He had tried a beard once, but it tended to scratch or tickle his victims and alert them before he could get his fangs in. He stepped out of the coffin as he checked the calendar. Wednesday. Laundry night. He looked at the hamper full of white shirts with a sigh, wishing he hadn't gotten hungry one night and drunk the maid. Dracula took the hamper up the stairs out of the basement to the laundry room, where he could sort which ones would need pre-soak or might need a long spin cycle. One had several drops of blood like an infant vampire who hadn't yet learned to make a clean break. Dracula had been 1,200 years dead for the past 4 centuries. But who counted after 1,000 anyway? But in the stains that he knew would never come out, he saw the centuries were catching up with him. It wouldn't be long before he needed a bib. He reminded himself for at least the 768th time that something other than white tuxedo shirts wouldn't show wear so quickly. He used a bleach pen on a few spots and threw the pile in the washer. The machine had taken him another 2 years to save up for, but he still line-dried everything, having decided to spend his savings on a new casket instead of the dryer. The laundry started. Dracula turned to his list of chores. Next up, dusting. And now it's your turn. What is the real, mundane reality of Dracula's modern, everyday life?